Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the weekly Purple Penny coin news video. It's Monday, and Monday we're here in the shop doing our bookkeeping and getting new products priced up and taking photos and doing all that wonderful stuff that you need to do to keep the coin shop running. The computer I use to do these videos decided to install updates for about an hour and a half this morning. I wasn't too hopeful about it working, but it seems to have come back to life just in time, which is fantastic. This week in the shop, we of course shut early on Friday. Our previous guide dog Valley, who we said goodbye to about a year ago, she went to a client about a year ago, and they had a graduation ceremony for the latest batch of guide dogs that had graduated, so it was great to go along to that. Valley didn't recognise us until we'd taken our masks off, and as soon as we took our masks off, she was all over us, so it was wonderful to see her again. The shop was quite busy last week, lots of buying, lots of selling, and lots of regulars coming in, which, as I always say, is fantastic. I love having conversations with everyone when they come in, as does Catherine. It makes the job pretty easy. Now, there wasn't really too much of note in coin news this week, but I did manage to dig up a few things. We'll just say hello to everyone first. Hello Matthew John, Paul Spink, Alex Birkin, Alison Brooks, Gwen Simpson, Gary Tate, Wendy Sig, Val Young, Neil Coughlin, Trevor Donovan, and Werner. Werner's a regular that comes in here. So let's just have a quick look at the news for the week. Now, this Thursday, believe it or not, is another raft of Royal Australian Mint releases. There's the Battle of Nui Lei 50-cent piece, which is due out this Thursday, and then all of the annual lunar coins are due out. So the domed $5 silver proof, the two $1 coin set, the tetradecagon 50-cent, the half-ounce silver ingot. Now, the reason why I've said RAM releases question mark is that we don't have any of that stuff at all yet. We've had no shipping notifications. The Mint, of course, is in Canberra, and they are locked down, and we are completely unaware of what is going on there. So even though the releases are due this Thursday, I'm not hopeful that we'll have any of that stock by this Thursday. Animalia shipping on some of the products is still delayed. The very few gold 50-cent pieces that we got allocated arrived last week, and about a third of the silver special edition coins with the books arrived last week as well. We're still waiting on the rest of the ones that we were allocated, and again, we have no particular idea about when they are due either. So it's just the big unknown at the moment with those. A couple of interesting tidbits that I dug up out of the coin news this week. One is that a Chinese man showed up at a car dealer and paid $8,000 in coins for a car. Apparently it took the people in the car dealership 3.5 hours to count them all, and it was everything from 1 cent coins up to 1 yuan coins. This sort of thing does happen from time to time, and usually it's someone taking the mickey when they're doing it. They're paying a fine or paying some sort of government fee or something like that, but in this case it's a gentleman who wanted to buy a car, so he had 5 bags in wheelbarrows of coins, and it was $8,000 apparently worth of coins, so that's a bucket load of coins. The other bit of news that I spied this week was 2 metal detectorists in England were arrested after they were found to be concealing a hoard of Viking coins that they had detected in the UK. Now, if you hadn't guessed, I'm a bit of a nerd with archaeology and history and stuff like that, and if you'd watched a show called Time Team or The Detectorists or any of those sorts of archaeology shows that come from the UK, then you would probably know that they have what's called treasure laws in the UK, where things that are dug up, if they meet certain conditions, then they are automatically declared treasure and need to be handed in to the government. And in the case of coins, if there is 2 or more coins found in the same spot that have more than 10% content of gold and silver, then that is called treasure, and that needs to be turned into the government. And if they're base metal coins that have less than 10% gold or silver, then 10 or more found in one spot need to be turned into the government. They have to be older than 300 years as well. And then other metallic objects that are older than 300 years, more than 10% gold or silver are declared treasure and are turned into the government. Now, it doesn't mean that the detectorists that found them get nothing. Generally, from what I understand, the government can choose to sell the treasure and half the proceeds go to the detectorist and the landowner, or they can actually hand the treasure back and then the detectorist and the landowners get to split the proceeds between them. So these two gentlemen had many dozens of Viking coins and some Viking silver ingots that they had found and concealed, and the police found them out, and as such they got arrested. So that's concealing treasure in the UK. If you find it, don't conceal it because you'll get in the pulp. Don't do that. Right, so hello to a few more people. Hello Aaron, Patrick, Alan, John, Ash, Lord Edward, and Jason. Right, so topic of the week is something a bit different this week, and this came about from this coin that we purchased this week. We purchased this off of a dealer that's in Sydney who kindly offered to sell it to us. It's a George III halfpenny, an English halfpenny, dates 1770 to 1775, and those of you who have sharp eyes will note that we've got the portrait on one side all looking hunky-dory, and then the portrait on the other side is actually mirror imaged. So, and it's actually not only mirror imaged, it's in Cuse, the design's in Cuse. So this is a particular type of error called a brockage error, and brockage errors they used to be quite, well, I won't say quite common, they were more common in the past when coins were hammered, and then less so when we moved to screw presses, and now that we're in fully automated coin minting, they are very unusual indeed. So I thought today we might just have a look at what a brockage actually is and how it's made. So this coin here is a good example of a brockage. Catherine and I have had a few over the years, handled a few. I'm not actually sure that we've ever sold one, but we've had a few. So what I've done is really made up some really terrible animation, which I'm sure you're all going to love, about how a brockage actually comes about. So this is hang on a second, how am I going to, there we go. This is a terrible 2D rendition of a coin press. We've got the hammer die up the top and the anvil die down the bottom, and the collar die around the bottom of the anvil die there. And those of you who know a little bit about how coins are made, a coin actually comes in there, sits in that little pocket on top of the anvil die. The collar die rises up around it, and then the hammer die comes down and strikes a coin. So let's actually just run through that process. So there's a little gold coin popping into that little cavity in there. So that generally gets pushed in by what's called a feeder finger, which is a disc with holes in it that the coins sit in, and it spins around and pops them into the cavity there. And now we get the hammer die coming down and the collar die going up, and the coin gets struck. But let's just imagine for a second that that coin is perhaps slightly oversized. Perhaps it didn't go through the upsetting mill to have a rim formed around it. Perhaps it's just a slight manufacturing fault. But whatever the reason, there's something not quite right with this coin, or there's something not quite right with the hammer die, and so this coin actually gets struck. And when the hammer die retracts, rather than the coin being ejected from the press as it should when the collar die drops down, it actually sticks to the hammer die, and it actually extrudes around the hammer die and you get little sort of flanges that go up around the hammer die, and you end up with this struck coin that is stuck to the bottom of the hammer die. And it's a perfectly struck coin, except it's stuck to the die. So, you know, let's say, for example, the anvil die has the heads design of the coin on there, then the bottom of that, what's called a die cap, has got the heads design of the coin on there. So this is the first step in the process of a brockage being struck. We've now got a die cap stuck to the hammer die. The die cap has been struck, and it has been struck with the design that is on the anvil die. So let's say in our case it's the head side of the design. Now we get another coin blank coming into the coin press, and the hammer die comes down, the collar die goes up, and we end up with that blank being struck by the die cap. Now, what is it actually being struck by? It's not being struck by the design on the hammer die, it's being struck by the die cap. And of course, that side of the die cap that is striking it has the head's design of a coin on it. And the net result of that is you're going to end up with an inverse strike of the head design of the coin on that new blank. Okay, so that inverse design is the brockage, and the brockage is struck by the die cap. Retracts, and now we've got our little orange brockage coin in there ready to go out, and you end up back at the beginning, ready for the process to start again. But of course that die cap can stay there for many different blanks to come through and strike many different brockages. Now as time goes by, that die cap actually stretches out and extrudes around that hammer die, getting taller and taller. The struck design on the bottom of the die cap becomes more and more worn, weaker and weaker, spreading out more and more, and you end up with brockages that are called late state brockages that are struck as the die cap wears out, basically. So this is what your brockage is going to look like. So there's our little orange jigger there, our little brockage error, and we're going to have the brockage strike on the top of it, because that of course was struck by the die cap, and we're going to end up with the regular head side of the design on the other side. So this is a ferry token, a Stockton ferry token, and you can see at the bottom there a perfect strike that says Stockton Ferries, and then at the top there you can see Stockton Ferries, but it is actually mirrored and in incuse. So that is the brockage strike. And if you look closely, you'll actually see that the Stockton Ferry lettering is actually sort of stretched out and almost rolling out over towards the edge of the coin. And that's because as the die cap strikes more and more tokens, it stretches out more and more, and each brockage that it strikes becomes more and more stretched out and extruded. So that's what a brockage is. Of course, the other part of what a brockage is the die cap, and die caps are called die caps because they look like bottle caps. And here's an example of a die cap here. This is a 5-cent die cap, and you can see in those images at the top right there that it has a distinctive look of a bottle cap, and that's because it has actually extruded up around the die. This one has struck lots and lots and lots of brockages, so you can see on the bottom left image there that all of that reverse design is basically worn away, or the head's design is worn away. But on the bottom right hand side there, the 5-cent design on the inside of the die cap is almost perfect, because of course that's stuck to the die and that doesn't wear out. It's the design on the other side that wears out. So that's a brockage, and that's a die cap. Die caps are it's very unusual to see die caps. You know, I've probably seen less than 10, I guess, maybe less than 20. Brockages, late state brockages, are much more common. Certainly in the decimal series there aren't a lot of them, but in the pre-decimal series they are not that unusual at all. There are different types of brockages. Sometimes that coin can be offset when it's struck by the die cap, so you end up with partial brockages and things like that. So I thought that was an interesting error to share with you this week. Brockages and die caps. If you're just wondering about this 5-cent die cap here, it does actually weigh the right amount. It weighs 2.83 grams, which is exactly what it should weigh, even though intuitively looking at all of the metal that is stretched out on it, you wouldn't think that it only had the same amount of metal as a normal 5-cent piece. Right. Questions? So Alex has said that the government offers them for sale to museums first. Now, Alex is talking about treasure that is found in the UK. We were talking about metal detectorists finding coins. And when coins and metal items that are found that meet certain criteria in the UK, they are declared treasure and have to be turned over to the government. And the government can then choose to sell those items and share the proceeds with the people who found the items. And Alex is just pointing out that the government often sells them to museums first, and that's quite true. And then Lord Blackwood is asking how our poll went last week with the gold animalia coin. So we didn't get any responses to the poll during the live video, but I did have 3 people message me after the video with pictures of their gold coin and their book, and on Wednesday we actually got our allocation of gold coins and books showing up here. So I'm not really sure what the Mint was playing at with making those gold coins and books available to some wholesalers and not others. We did ask them a question, but we don't have a response from them. But it was extremely disappointing that some people had them and we were told that they were delayed indefinitely. I feel like a bit of a goose saying that they were delayed indefinitely when obviously they weren't. So thanks to the Mint for that. So Edward Blackwood is asking, how did the Incuse 50-cent millennium occur? So that's the Incuse millennium, which is the year 2000 millennium 50-cent piece. There's a variety of that which has an Incuse cross of St. George, which is the vertical and horizontal cross on the Union Jack on the reverse. From what I understand about that is that the Mint were planning on putting a coin that was like enameled into the Mint set, so they actually created a die that had an Incuse flag so that they had somewhere to put that enamel, as opposed to the coloured coin which actually appeared in the Mint set, which was pad printed, and that had a completely smooth surface and then there was just pad printing on top of it. I believe that they were investigating an alternate way of doing that, and they created this single Incuse die, and then they decided not to go with that, and they ended up using that die to strike normal circulation coins. And that idea that it's only one die pair sort of fits with the observations of the Incuse millenniums, that there's about 200,000, which is about the right number for one die pair. Patrick is asking, are they going to reschedule the Coin Expo in Adelaide? Patrick, who knows? The big problem with the Coin Expo was that the cost to hire the hall is large, the drill hall is large, and there was no clarity from the drill hall about what would happen if the event had to be cancelled with regards to that money. And the NSSA, the Numismatic Society of South Australia, which organises the Adelaide Coin Expo, is only a very small society, and they don't have a lot of money, and they can't afford to eat multiple thousands of dollars for hall hire for a show that doesn't go ahead. So that's why it was cancelled. And yeah, they'll try and have one again next year, but the way the world is at the moment, who knows when that will be. So that's as good as I can offer about that. Right, if no one else has any questions, we'll just wind it up there. We've just gone over 20 minutes. Thanks everyone, as always, for watching. We've got a couple of topics already lined up for next week, but I'm always keen for people to please send through ideas for things that they'd like me to cover. Oh, there's a good question. Edward, I think I answered the Incuse Millennium question. Alex is asking, have you ever heard of a feeder finger that found their way out of an Australian mint? No. No, I haven't heard of any that have got out of the mint. I know that there's a couple in the gallery at the mint, or there was at one point. There's a couple there. But I've never seen one that's got out, Alex. So, have seen some dies that have got out. We've got a edge lettering die for a coin that was struck by the Royal Australian Mint. I'm not sure how that got out. I think it must have got out in scrap metal or something. But I've never seen a feeder finger that's got out. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. Please take care, stay safe wherever you are. It won't be like this forever, things will get better at some point. So we'll see you all next week.